All right, Alexander, let's talk about the Trump Organization CFO, Alan Weisselberg, who has surrendered actually to the authorities for an indictment that New York City, Cyrus Vance, and the Manhattan prosecutor are bringing up towards the Trump Organization. And well, let me read you what Zero Hedge says here, because I find this incredible that after having his organization picked apart, examined from top to bottom, left to right, I mean, full cavity search. I mean, this is what they come up with. Years and years of trying to catch Trump or the Trump Organization on something. Here's what they come up with. This is from Zero Hedge, and I think it's reporting from information it's received from the New York Times. Prosecutors from Vance's office and from the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James' office, are still reportedly looking into whether the Trump Organization neglected to pay payroll taxes on taxable income. Trump himself hasn't been charged and isn't expected to be, though it's still possible that investigators might come up with something might come up with something to charge him with. I couldn't keep a straight face, Alexander. And finally, according to Reuters sources, the charges Weisselberg is facing are believed to be related to Weisselberg's acceptance of perks like rent-free apartments and leased cars without reporting them properly on his tax returns. I'm speechless. If these are the crimes of super high-level executives of billion-dollar companies, the fact that they haven't reported leased cars, then I don't know what to say.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, this isn't a real investigation. This is straightforward harassment. What's been going on ever since Donald Trump became a candidate for the presidency back in, was it 2015, is that they've been going through his organization, they've been going through his taxes, they've been investigating his contacts with foreigners, Russians especially, as we know. We've had a special counsel looking at him. We've got federal prosecutors in New York looking at him. There've been allegations of hush money payments to former porn stars, every conceivable thing you can find. And they've come up with nothing again. This is the fact. You remember a couple of weeks ago, months ago, there was all that fuss about his tax returns. Do you remember that? Do you remember how the tax returns were going to disclose some terrible, terrible facts? And, there was all that excitement when the tax returns were published. We said, I think it was just before the election, that there's absolutely nothing there. And we've heard nothing about them since. And now we have this huge, mammoth investigation into a large organization which is involved in the construction industry, one of the toughest, most fierce, competitive businesses, not just in the United States, but in any country. And they've come up with the fact that the CEO hasn't declared the fact that he uses cars. I mean, it's just comical. And Trump himself, note that he's in the clear. They can't find anything against this man. Now, I'm going to say this. I am actually surprised. I mean, I've said this before. Donald Trump must be, amongst certainly the billionaire class, to which he belongs, he must be the most honest man in America. Because, I mean, what other person can you say that, if you went through their affairs in such detail, you would come up with nothing? I mean, it's just astonishing. And once again, we're going to go through a long process. There'll be charges brought, no doubt. But the way these things always end, and I'm sure they will in this case, is that it's inconceivable that the prosecutors will really want to take this to court. There'll be an agreement to pay a certain amount of money, and the whole thing will close, and we will move on. And if anybody thinks that this is going to damage Donald Trump's political prospects or ambitions or his electoral prospects, then they are delusional.
Yeah, I love how the New York Times says it. Though it's still possible that investigators might come up with something to charge him with. That's where I lost it, and I just started laughing.
I know.
It's what's that phrase from Stalin, or it's attributed to Stalin, where you look for the crime and not the man.
No.
What's that phrase again?
Oh yes, give me the man, and I'll find you the crime.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
That's what. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I know. They can't even do that. They can't even do that. I mean, it's just bizarre, and it's possible it's possible that, we might be hit by some great asteroid and, all of us will die. I mean, that's the kind of level of probability at which this case is now sunk. I mean, why can't they just leave this man alone? I mean, why can't they just deal with him as a political challenge, which is all that this is? I mean, to be straightforward about this kind of case should, in any normal functioning system, have been settled already. I mean, I say it will be settled. I've no doubt it will be. But it should have been settled already. It's only been pursued to this point because the organization, the Trump organization, is connected to Donald Trump, the man. It's political. So just, if he's a political challenge, fight him politically. This petty harassment of this man and of the people who work for him, it's just outrageous, actually.
Yeah, they can't fight him politically. The media needs him. Their ratings are in the crapper. Without Donald Trump, nothing. The Biden White House, the Democrats, they need Trump as well, because if they don't have Trump to feed, the whole orange man bad to people like AOC and Ilhan Omar and all the progressive wing and the crazy woke SJW left, if they don't have Trump, they don't have orange man bad to feed these people, then, they're going to actually start to look at what the hell the Biden administration is doing. What are they up to? Do people even realize that Biden's promises, where's the student loan forgiveness, Joe Biden? Where is that you were promising?
Yeah.
Where are all the progressive things that you were talking about? Nowhere, nothing, zero, zilch, nada. Alexander, I remember when there were how many books? 10 books about how Trump's staff is upset with Trump and they're leaving and they're defecting and they hate Trump. You have reports now coming out from Politico how Kamala Harris's staff is completely abandoning her, and they say she's a tyrant to work with. I mean, without Trump, they're nothing, and they need Trump because otherwise we're going to focus on stuff like Kamala Harris's staff, or the fact that Kamala didn't go to the border and Trump was actually at the border. Well, Kamala was around the border. She was in El Paso, 1,000 miles away, but Trump was there with Greg Abbott. And once again, another win for Trump. Attacking Trump, the Trump organization, with these stupid charges is a win for Trump.
Absolutely. Can I just make a quick point about that? I mean, you mentioned the fact that, Trump, finding it difficult to get people to work for him. Well, the Trump organization has been under enormous pressure. Have floods of people walked out of it and come along and, given evidence? No. Even this man who's just been in the process of being charged now has apparently, there've been lots of attempts to get him, to turn him, and he's always refused. So that's perhaps a rather more valid comparison. As for Kamala Harris, well, the fact that people find her difficult to work with, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. And I'm sure it doesn't surprise most people. And the fact that she doesn't want to go anywhere close to the border, that doesn't surprise me too. And as for the Democratic Party, well, I think one of the reasons why they have to keep the spectre of the orange man alive is because not only is it necessary to distract attention from what the administration is either doing or not doing, but because it's quite clear to me that the only thing that's holding together this unwieldy beast that is now the Democratic Party is this artificial worked up hatred of Donald Trump.
Let me make a statement here to close out the video and see what you think. I believe that being kicked off of social media at least these short form platforms like Twitter, where you just kind of spit out stupid stuff and sometimes you can't hold yourself back. I think this was a blessing for Trump. And here's the reason why. Looking at how Trump is approaching things now, it seems like he's much more focused and he has a plan for how he is going to take on the Democrats, the DNC, not only in 2024, in 22, but I believe in 24. I think it's becoming obvious that he's gearing up for a run. But it seems like he's a lot more focused and more strategic. In other words, it seems like he's goading the Democrats. He's trolling them. He knows they're obsessed with him. He knows they're going to screw up and they're going to do stupid things like not going to the border, so he can then go to the border, or goading them to actually go to the border, but not really go to the border and go to El Paso, so that he can show up at the border with the government. It seems like he's more strategic and more surgical now that he's gotten a lot of the stupid Twitter stuff, is in the rear view mirror.
Well, I'm not going to try and dissect his policies because, his tactics, because that's not something I am really very skilled at doing. But I will just make one observation, which is that politics, US politics, is littered with the political corpses of people who underestimated Donald Trump's political skills. This is I've said this many times, it's a much cleverer man than people realise. He understands politics, or at least he understands the American people and the American electorate extremely well, which is something that his opponents never seem to do and never seem to understand to anything like the same degree. And he understands timing, which is again something his opponents don't understand. And it's entirely typical of a political operator like that, of that kind of skill, that they turn something like the loss of Twitter to their own advantage, so that his opponents think, we've knocked him out now because we've taken away his access to his Twitter. But then they find that, in fact, they were looking at the wrong thing and that it wasn't Twitter that was the real weapon of importance, but that he had other things to play with, and that the real thing that made the difference was not Twitter, but actually Donald Trump himself. So, he's an extraordinary political force. He's an instinctive politician. He's much cleverer than his opponents realise. And he can strategize. Of that, there's no question.
Yeah, Kamala's imploding. Biden's a mess.
Yeah.
Trump sees this.
Absolutely.
And he feeds off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. He feeds off of it. Joe Biden 20 years ago was, a real politician. Today he is basically a memory of that person, if I could put it in that rather measured way. Kamala Harris isn't a politician even. She's just what the Russians call an apparatchik, somebody who operates within the system and floats upwards. Bear in mind, in the Democratic Party primaries, she didn't win a single one. She was knocked out in a talk show by Tulsi Gabbard. She is somebody you cannot possibly hope to match against someone like Donald Trump. She's just not in the same. She's not on the same planet as him when it comes to electoral politics.
Yeah, and so they continue to go after Trump with these stupid things, like these dumb games, like this New York prosecutor thing. This indictment. It's just they're just shooting themselves, not in the foot. They're shooting themselves everywhere.
Yeah, well, this is it. This is exactly the point, because of course it's not real politics. It's a sign that they don't know how to deal with this man politically. They tried to use those two impeachments and neither of them succeeded. On the contrary, both of them, in my opinion, made him stronger in the end and increased his grip on the Republican Party. So that didn't work. Russiagate obviously didn't work, but they're still using the same attempts to use the levers of power, the law enforcement agencies, to knock him out, rather than do what they really should be doing, which is try to explain to the American people why they have something better to offer than he has. But then, as I said, if you're not real politicians, if you're not real people who understand your electorate well, that's extremely difficult for you to do.
Yeah, the Democrats' attacks on Trump are completely Mickey Mouse. But if there's one weakness of Trump's and there's one thing that he has to worry about going forward, it's the Republicans and not the Democrats, specifically the rhinos. Those are the people that he should worry about. And that's why I think 2022 is so important, because if Trump is able to get a House and a Senate that is more MAGA than Mitch McConnell, then he's in good shape for 2024. If not, then his real enemy is within the party, not the other party.
I totally agree. That was what hobbled his presidency. I mean, to be very clear about this, 3 years out of those 4 were lost because he didn't have the support of the Republican leadership in Congress. I mean, they weren't able to even repeal Obamacare, for example. I mean, he didn't have the support of the Republican leadership in Congress. He wasn't able to appoint the people he wanted to his cabinet, especially not to his foreign policy posts. He had to work and agree things with people like John McCain. And, of course, he always had to get things past people like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. Now, and, of course, those people kept Russiagate alive. Now, if he hadn't had that problem, he would have been in a completely different place. And if past 2022, he's able to assert control of the Republican Party, not in the country he has it already, but in Congress, then of course he'll be in a completely different position going forward.
Yeah, exactly. We'll leave it there, guys. Look for us on ODYSEE, BitChute, Super U, the free speech video platform, Super U, also Rumble. Trump has got an official page on Rumble, official channel. So does the Duran. And of course, guys, support us on Locals. Support us on the Duran shop.